Hey, PlayStation brass, want me to buy a PS5 ASAP when it comes out? Have a listen. This is MultimediaJay radio style for Saturday, November 16th, 2019. Let's start the show.
Warning. MultimediaJay radio style contains controversial content, strongly voiced opinions, and uncensored bluntness. Listener discretion is advised.
And now, the show that really tells it like it is. MultimediaJay radio style. Here's MultimediaJay.
So it's November 2019, and there's some very disturbing developments taking place on YouTube as we speak. I, as of this recording, am doing some updates that are non-time sensitive that are pretty sad and depressing. But one thing that I cannot do is allow this channel to be stopped by stuff that's not happening or stuff that hasn't happened yet. Yes, it could be the case that my channel gets shut down or whatever under some wackerdoodle technicality under the new rule systems that YouTube is rolling out in the next couple of months or sometime in 2020 or something along those lines. Yes, that is true, but until or if that happens, we carry on. We keep trying to upload content that people want to watch or podcasts that people want to listen to. It's just the right thing to do. You can't let people who have subscribed to you and have shown through their actions that they appreciate what it is that you do get pushed aside because of something that hasn't happened yet or something that isn't happening. So in the midst of everything that's going on, I've decided to focus on a news story that I haven't gotten around to that would slip away otherwise, and that is the PlayStation CEO talking about how he wants people to switch over to PlayStation 5 as quickly as possible. PS4 owners, holiday 2020 is going to roll around, PlayStation 5 is going to come out, and he wants people to buy PS5s and, move away from PS4 and make the switch as soon as possible. Well, I've decided to humor this kind of bravado in the news lately and actually talk about what it would take to get me to become a PlayStation guy. What would it take for me to have a PlayStation 5 and actually play games on PlayStation instead of PC? Now, I am definitely a PC gamer. Been a PC gamer since college. Once I started building my own systems, it was all over. I don't believe in the whole PCMR thing, and I'm not a fan of the whole PCMR thing, but PC as a platform is quite doable. And what I've been seeing most recently over the years is that maybe I won't be playing games right away, but PC ports eventually come around, even to franchises that are really, really famous on console, like Final Fantasy and whatnot. Even Red Dead Redemption 2 came over to PC. Once all the gremlins get worked out, I might get around to checking it out. But the point is, the walled garden that used to exist between consoles and PCs, to where you could tell that someone was a PC gamer because of certain key titles that they had never played before, that's kind of gone now. Stuff finds its way over to PC. And what this does is this serves to cement anybody who doesn't mind upgrading computer hardware or having their own system or building stuff that plays the games they want to play, basically making their own consoles. PC as a platform is flexible enough to allow for that without having to put up with the gotchas that are inherent in the console world. So, for example, I see a console game out there nowadays, and I'm like, oh, this game looks interesting. My first question is it on Steam? Or is it on GOG? Is there some way that I can play this on PC? And this has been made even more interesting by things like, for example, Microsoft and the dual releases between Xbox and PC, where you buy a game, and if you get the Xbox version, you get the PC version, and vice versa. So even the Microsoft store in Windows 10 has a couple of titles, And there's programs out there that'll allow you to put like Microsoft Store titles into your Steam library and be able to start these games through the start menus in Steam and whatnot. Well, the big picture mode or the pop-up menu or something like that. So the bottom line is PC is a lot more of a compelling platform than it used to be. I mean, there are still genres that are unique to the PC, like MMOs and stuff that makes heavier use of keyboards and mice, but keyboards and mice are available on consoles nowadays. So the walls have been collapsing between the PC and the consoles to the point where you can very safely say that a lot of consoles out there are basically low-end gaming PCs. If you take a look, for example, at what kind of Xboxes are available and what they can do with certain titles. Take, for example, the Xbox One in its various forms and how it plays Forza Horizon 4 versus the PC release, which is pretty easy to max out with everything cranked all the way in ultra mode at 60 frames per second. You look at what the various Xboxes out there can do with that game and what their current prices are, and this is as of 2019, and it makes sense given the hardware that you're getting, that the Xbox that'll do 30 frames per second costs this much, the Xbox that'll do 1080-60 costs this much. It makes sense. It also makes sense in terms of new hardware coming out, even if it's sold at a loss, coming out at a higher price point than what's currently available, essentially turning the PS4, in this case, into the budget console, and then you get into PS5 later on. The same thing exists on PC as well. There's a curve of upgrades and stuff that you can go through to get better performance out of the games you already have. So, where I stand with consoles right now is my most current console is the PlayStation 3 Slim. Yeah, quite some time ago, but I haven't had any real reason to move beyond that because time and again, when there's something I want to play, it's either on PC or there is a PC port that will eventually land the game on PC. So it can be on Steam, GOG, etc. And as I've heard from PC gamers so many times over the years, when you go to update your graphics card, you're basically paying the cost of a new console. And in my case, with my yo-yo setup between PCs, CPUs, and GPUs, I believe that when you build a gaming PC, you emphasize the CPU, even though it's not a popular move to make. Put in just enough graphics to get started with what it is you want to do. And then have one CPU last you through multiple GPUs before you start getting CPU limited and it's time to get rid of the CPU. In many cases, if you're already on a certain GPU that's being held back by the CPU, the GPU can go into your next system. It's all about transferable versus non-transferable upgrades, as opposed to consoles where you don't know what you're getting. You don't know if backward compatibility is going to work on the next piece of hardware that you get. And eventually you have to start shuffling between various boxes and get HDMI switches to switch between them because some stuff works on this old box, but not on this new box, etc., etc. So the big thing I'd be looking for from the PlayStation 5 is backward compatibility going all the way back to PS1. And that includes PS2 and PS3. Whether it's through software emulation or what have you, probably more likely to be through software emulation. I mean, if the Nintendo Switch has Wii games and eventually Wii U games coming to the online store over on that platform, then I really think PlayStation needs to Sony needs to make some kind of PlayStation box that not only serves as the killer piece of hardware that everybody who's interested in any generation of PlayStation wants to have in their living room, but also hardware that can serve as a preemptive strike against the rise of clones, like what happened with Famiclones and the clone consoles out there that play all the old cartridge games. Now, to some extent, I think the expiring hardware patent issues of the Famiclones is not going to be as much of a thing on CD-based consoles. But the used game question is still something that these companies need to answer. What do we do about the used game market? Yeah, sure, it may not be what it used to be, but if you're wandering through a secondhand shop and you see a $2 PlayStation 2 game that looks interesting, imagine if you could pick up that game, bring it home, put it in your PlayStation 5, and have it play and have the graphics look amazing. Have the graphics look like they've been upscaled, even though it's an old game. That's the sort of backward compatibility that I'd like to see, and I don't think anybody has pulled that off yet. So let's recap. The PlayStation 2 was able to play PlayStation 1 games. The PlayStation 3 had a limited backward compatibility run that would play PS2 and PS1 games, and then later versions of the PS3, like the one I have, will play PS1 games but not PS2. That was weird. When I encountered that, and I saw, oh, look, it plays PS1 games, but not PS2 games because of the unique features of the emotion engine and stuff like that versus what PS3 and PS3 and 1 and 2 had. That was bizarre. PS4, does it play anything? I haven't really been paying much attention to PS4, but that's the thing. If PS5 can solve all of this because there's enough hardware under the hood to have software emulation or something else, make this the most backward compatible PlayStation ever that plays all previous PlayStation titles. That would be amazing. Even if it was something where something read the disc and then that gave you a CD key or whatever for a download from PlayStation's service, and you didn't actually use the disc in order to play the game anymore, and it allowed for patches and updates and stuff like that. That would basically be something that was at least as compelling as PC. But with PC gaming through Steam and especially the GOG service, where you can buy an old DOS game, for example, and the download and installer will include a custom version of DOSBox that's already pre-customized to run the DOS game that you just picked up from GOG. That sort of thing is already available on PC. There really is no generation gap. You'll see the graphical differences if you play something from the PlayStation 2 era versus a PC game that comes out today. You'll see the graphical differences and stuff, but in some cases, depending on how the game was coded, you can actually run the game at today's resolution, even though it is going to be high resolution but low texture detail and stuff. And that's before we get mods involved. There are some very dedicated modders for various games out there that allow for things like upgrades to textures and stuff to modernize old games that don't get the remake treatment outright. The bottom line here, though, is PCs are robust, while consoles are getting squeezed, and console makers have to figure out how they're going to keep this piece of hardware doing what it's doing. How are they going to keep selling this stuff instead of having some kind of Dreamcast moment? It's kind of like the whole thing with the Nintendo Switch being both a home console and portable, and having numerous options available via the touchscreen, the dock, and things like that. Not talking about the Switch Lite, talking about the original Switch that is still I guess, as far as I'm concerned, the main Switch. But the whole thing of being able to go from home to the road and back is something that I think Android devices should probably get better at doing. And Nintendo's ahead of the curve on this one. But the whole thing with mobile devices and the gaming capabilities that mobile devices are picking up, all that needs to happen is there needs to be a solution to the input problems, like how do you hook up a controller easily and keyboard mouse easily, and how do you broadcast to a big screen easily without latency issues. That's the big thing. I think once mobile figures this out, and we have basically a mobile device that can serve as a gaming appliance when you're at home, that's when the console manufacturers are going to have to go back to the drawing board, because, again, you're between mobile and PC. How do you keep a decent critical mass of installed units in play with those two titans between you, and mobile gaining as mobile hardware continues to be developed to be more efficient and deliver more bang for buck power-wise? So in terms of PlayStation 5, I would upgrade to a PlayStation 5 ASAP, like this CEO wants me to do, if it was a Sony box that didn't have the gotchas of a console, which is kind of what consoles are becoming known for, whether they're walled gardens, have issues with backward compatibility, require cluttering up your living room with all kinds of previous devices, some of which may have support issues down the road. Not being able to just have a Sony box that plays all your PlayStation stuff, the same way that you can have a PC playing all the PC stuff, or maybe at some point a mobile device playing everything that you have through mobile markets that is good enough to not look lousy on a TV screen, or play it dual style, similar to a Wii U or a Nintendo Switch, using your device as the controller and having something on the screen so you can use swipe controls or something on your phone as your controller as you play the game, which I think way back in the Wii U days, the Wii U was kind of a prototype of this whole dual screen gaming with big screen, little screen, where you have controls or something on a little screen, but you're looking at a big screen because you're at home and you have a nice TV. What would get me to retire my PlayStation 3 after all these years would be a PlayStation 5 device that plays 4K Blu-ray and has so much backward compatibility that I don't need another PlayStation device. And I don't need some kind of retro console to come out years down the road that lets you play PS2 with HDMI or PS1 with HDMI or something along those lines. Because let's face it, the main case for backward compatibility is that there is so much good stuff that has been on the PlayStation platforms of years gone by that you would want to have a way of playing all that stuff on one Sony box. And then it would give Sony the option of introducing little add-on features or value-added features or patches or whatever through the PlayStation service. So there are some games that, because of rights issues or what have you, are not going to be able to get the remake treatment. We can't remake everything. And in some cases, the remakes and re-releases are just not going to be like the original experience. For example, Grand Theft Auto games that have less music on the radio stations because of licensing issues with the music if the game were to be sold nowadays, as opposed to picking up a PlayStation version of the game and having something in your living room that plays that PS2 style with everything kind of upscaled as much as the machine could do. It used to be the case as well, particularly when I was growing up, that as we went from 2D to 3D, 18-bit to 16-bit, that it was always the better looking games or the more modern games that were getting all of the attention. And as we see nowadays with some deliberate throwbacks to older forms of graphics or more primitive gameplay design or even 8-bit side scrollers that are out, or other games that are basically made in the style of some classic game like Castlevania Symphony of the Night. It's no longer the most modern games that people are drawn to all the time. Some people like to play a mix of new and old, and some people like to play a wide variety of software. Take the Trine series, for example. The Trine games are side-scrollers in today's day and age. I mean, you can make a pretty good side-scroller if you know what it is that you're doing. On PC, you have options to have one box do everything that you need it to do without needing lots of extra old boxes that you're continuing to try to support and keep running because there's an old game from some previous generation that you still want to play. That doesn't exist in PlayStation land. And if Sony could make this work, where the PlayStation 5 is able to software emulate everything, including running the old gaming discs, I would pick one up without even batting an eye. 4K Blu-ray and enough backward compatibility to play everything from PS1 to 4, I would pick it up. I don't care if it costs $500, $600. A Sony box that does everything, as far as I'm concerned, that can take care of all my PlayStation curiosity out there. And hey, if there's a PlayStation version of a game that plays better than the PC version, consider that. Or something exclusive, like a franchise that doesn't go to PC, despite all these PC ports coming out nowadays. If there was one Sony box that I could have in the living room and have that be one box, one HDMI that runs everything, it would not even be a question for me. I would go out and get that ASAP like the CEO wants. No gotchas, no gimmicks, no reintroduction of memory cards via these rumors about these proprietary SSDs and stuff like that. No, just plain old-fashioned Sony box, easy to maintain. You can upgrade the drive, etc., and it plays PlayStation stuff from throughout the years. Period. I would get one of those. And I'm sure that others would agree with me on this one. That if they didn't have to have a bunch of different boxes to play all kinds of PlayStation stuff from throughout the years, they would buy that one box and probably have it in their living room. So they have a box for PlayStation, they have a box for PC, and then it'll be up to Microsoft and Nintendo to decide they were going to follow suit and make something similar. But ultimately, consoles, as far as I'm concerned, have sold over the years for two reasons: their price and their simplicity. Both of those are being withered away by the demands to improve the hardware to the point where consoles can be a little more competitive with PC. And so, when those when those advantages start to wither away, when consoles are no longer an inexpensive way to get into decent looking gaming, and they're not as simple as they used to be due to their resemblance to gaming PCs nowadays, the last thing that consoles are going to have to deal with is the gotchas, the proprietary hardware, like if these SSDs that I've been hearing about come out, and you can only use a PlayStation SSD with this device instead of being able to install your own, or other gotchas like the cost of a subscription to play online on top of your internet access, which people were not too thrilled about when the rest of the consoles started, keeping pace with Xbox Live with the last generation of consoles. Or even something as simple as having to keep buying controllers all over again every single time you have something that you're upgrading to. So, and even things like, you may have liked the Wii U Pro controller. Doesn't work with the Nintendo Switch. You have to now buy a Switch Pro controller. Of course, I've ranted before about how easy it is to have way too many controllers just by being into gaming for any decent amount of time. Then, of course, there's the walled garden issues with crossplay between console and PC, or other stuff like DLC gimmicks or something along those lines. But there's lots of other gotchas out there that we could talk about, but that's really it. As the traditional advantages of consoles get worn away and consoles get squeezed between PC and mobile, the reason to buy these things is going to have to shift along with that. And consoles cannot continue saddling people with all of these gotchas that take advantage of the fact that somebody wants to be a console gamer for whatever reason. So folks, what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. I'm sure there's at least some people out there that think that my take on this has some merit to it, and if others have other ideas, why not? Let's talk about this sort of stuff. After all, this PlayStation head honcho wants us all to buy PS5s ASAP. Wouldn't it be nice if we could all respond with what it would take to get us to buy PlayStation 5s ASAP? This is MultimediaJay Radio Style. Don't touch that dial.